Live from the European Parliament in Strasbourg, this is Raw Politics. Thank you for joining us tonight, and this is what we have for you in the program. Low expectations. Theresa May prepares for a historic and potentially devastating vote on Brexit. Online influence, how both sides have been spending big money to try to swing tonight's vote. Lessons learned. We ask European leaders what Brexit, if anything, has taught them. Europe by choice. Meet the clothing designers trying to make the EU cool and heal divisions. And HMS Brexit, a not-so-subtle message to British politicians. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. Now, it may be called the meaningful vote, but a long-awaited decision on Brexit tonight may be high on drama and low on clarity. In fact, it could have many meanings. And what we do know is that Theresa May's hard-fought deal is expected to fail in the British Parliament. And the question seems to be by how much. Now, we have full coverage and analysis tonight from here in Strasbourg and over in London. That is where we find our political editor, Darren McCaffrey at Westminster. All right, Darren, you were there in the middle of the drama. The voting process it's expected to begin in about a couple of hours. What are we expecting tonight?
Well, Tessa, after 31 months since the referendum, over 18 months of negotiations, I think 13 government defeats, 12 EU summits, several cabinet resignations, 3 Brexit secretaries. We are finally here. This is D-Day for Theresa May's Brexit deal. And the expectation tonight in London is not if she will lose this vote, but simply by how much. I've heard varying figures from over 200, which would be an historic defeat for the government, down as low as 75, which, it must be said, Downing Street might be rather pleased with. In normal circumstances, simply losing this vote at all would lead to the resignation of a Prime Minister, potentially even the collapse of a government. So important, of course, is this deal to Theresa May's premiership. But as you say, we are about to wrap up 5 days of debates at the UK Westminster Houses of Parliament. It's been a pretty feisty debate over those 5 days. It is a Parliament and a country divided, and that's been reflected from the various voices. Let's have a listen.
There are some typical misconceptions about the withdrawal agreement. It is said, for example, that the CJEU retains jurisdiction over our courts. Once the time-limited obligations have wound down, that the withdrawal agreement settles. It does not. It does not. It does not. It does not. How many times do I have to say it to my honour?
Now is the time to walk away from the intransigence of the European Union and our failed policy of seeking to supplicate their guidelines, their terms and their paymasters. We witnessed similar events in May 1940 when the then Prime Minister actually won the vote on the Norway debate, but on reflection concluded that he had to resign because he had lost the confidence of Parliament as a whole. I believe, therefore, there are lessons in this for the Prime Minister to consider her position and to do so with dignity and without rancour.
What we're heading for is leaving with no deal at all. That will be just as catastrophic as my right honourable friend, the Attorney General, has just described, and it's the one thing which the vast majority of members of Parliament are flatly against, leaving without no deal. For that reason, pragmatism, in my opinion, common sense, requires us to vote for this withdrawal agreement to try to get back to some sort of orderly progress.
So I will vote against the motion and the deal because it is racked with self-doubt, defeatism and fear. But equally, for many of us who vote against the deal, we vote for, we aspire to something better and something brighter. And Mr. Speaker, with my heart and soul, I vote for the promise of Brexit that must be fulfilled.
We owe it to our constituents to tell the truth. We owe it to ourselves to do the right thing. And in rejecting the deal today, as we should, We must show, as parliamentarians of all parties and all views, that we are, after the vote tonight, capable of coming together to listen, to compromise in the interests of the people we come here to serve.
Right, well, let's get the views of two men who probably know more than I do about what's going to happen tonight. And indeed, in the days to come, we heard from Hilary Benn, the senior Labour MP in the Commons there, and Joey Jones, who's former special advisor to Theresa May. First of all, to you, Hilary Benn, what is your expectation of what is going to happen tonight in terms of the vote?
Well, I think we all expect that the Prime Minister is going to lose. I'm not going to speculate on the margin because some MPs make their mind up at the last moment, and the Prime Minister will no doubt be trying to persuade as many of her colleagues as she can to support her. But this will be a momentous moment because the Prime Minister will have lost on her major policy, the whole raison d'etre of her premiership, and this is pretty catastrophic. And the big question will be, what is she or what is Parliament going to do next?
And what would you like to see Parliament do next? I mean, do you want to wrest this process entirely away from the executive?
Well, the Prime Minister should do what she should have done 2.5 years ago, is to reach out to Parliament, said, look, we've got a challenge here. What might we be able to agree on? Because she makes a fair point when she says Parliament can be against something. What is Parliament for? So if she doesn't reach out, if she doesn't propose an alternative approach, she could say, I'm going to put my deal to the British people. Now, that really would be interesting. I don't suppose she'll do it. Then Parliament should begin by saying, OK, folks, which of these options, alternative options, is there support for? And Nick Bowles' bill, which I'm supporting, would give us a bill, a law, that could, for example, ensure that we can extend Article 50 so that we don't leave on the 29th of March with no deal that it's clear a majority of MPs are very strongly opposed to.
Joey, just going back a little bit, how have we ended up in this situation where the Prime Minister is essentially going to lose and potentially lose big tonight?
I think we've ended up in this situation because, well, for a range of reasons, partly because Theresa May and her colleagues didn't prepare people adequately for the nature of Brexit, which is compromise. They went round, and she went round blithely saying Brexit means Brexit, as though it was a sort of box-ticking exercise when it was never going to be anything like that. And actually, a compromise necessitates something where nobody is really happy with what comes through, but it does represent a way forward. She's also in this situation because she lost the general election, which then obviously hemorrhaged her authority, both in Parliament but also in terms of the negotiation. And I think broadly speaking, it's a situation where I don't want to lay everything far from it at the Prime Minister's door, but once you had Parliament split as it was in that way, and the reliance on the DUP, obviously very important around the backstop and around the border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland, it was always going to be very, very, very difficult.
And just quickly and finally, I mean, what do you think is going to happen next? I mean, where does she go? Back to Brussels? Try and get Parliament on side?
Reaching out to Parliament, for me, the route to a successful prosecution of this strategy always had to lie through the Labour Party as well as Conservative and DUP. She's never done that. She does need to do that, without doubt. I think the questions are not just for Theresa May, they're principally for the Cabinet now. You looked at the front bench yesterday, there was like despondency and fatalism had sunk all over the front bench of the Conservative Party. They need to rouse themselves, they need to get a grip, they need to work out whether they're going to get behind Theresa May to actually forge some sort of way forward, you know, whether that be votes in the House of Parliament, indicative votes or whatever, or make a decision, make a break, start with somebody else at the top, which would throw us into a whole different maelstrom.
And just very, very quickly, I mean, do you think Brussels should give a bit more room if she goes back tomorrow?
Well, the letter they produced this week hasn't really worked. I think the fundamental problem is that the Prime Minister hasn't faced up to the choices. And I agree with Joey. The impression was given we can have our cake and eat it. And the really brutal truth of the last 2.5 years is those illusions have been shattered. And it's because she hasn't been honest with herself, with the Cabinet and with the British people that there are choices to be made here, trade-offs, that she's come up with a deal which in the end pleases no one.
Gentlemen, thank you very much, much indeed. Joey Jones there and Hilary Benn. Just to talk, Tessa, very briefly about what's going to happen tonight. We are going to hear from the Prime Minister. She's going to conclude this debate in Parliament in just over an hour's time. We're going to see some votes on amendments. The main vote, we reckon, is going to take place about 8 p.m. local time here.
Maybe just a bit after.
Maybe just a bit after, so about 9 p.m. or slightly afterwards, Brussels time. And then what happens after that, well, potentially is anyone's guess.
All right, thank you for that, Darren McCaffrey there and his guest. And to talk about all of this, I am joined by Marietje Schaake, a Dutch MEP with the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats, as well as John Proctor, a British Conservative MEP from the European Conservatives and Reformists group. All right, I'll start with you, John. Would you like to hazard a guess that by how much will Theresa May lose that vote today? Because this will determine what happens next.
Clearly, the numbers are tight in Westminster this evening. I don't think the Prime Minister will lose the vote by anywhere near the numbers that are being touted about. So in terms of Darren's range, I think it'll be the lower end of his range. I'm more optimistic. But bear in mind, some of my friends and colleagues in Westminster, I know them well, and I think they'll make their minds up at the last moment. And also, most people in our parliamentary party are loyal to our party and are loyal to our Prime Minister as well. That's what they actually want to do. That's what they believe in. However, on this one very divisive issue of exiting the European Union, there are a difference of views within our own party.
Despite the rhetoric, so do you think they say one thing and probably vote another way?
I don't think that at all. I think when it actually comes to it, when they are facing the choice of carrying out the will of the people or potentially not and remaining in the European Union, I think that will sway colleagues. And you heard a contribution by Ken Clarke, who was one of the arch Remainers, actually saying that he's going to support the Prime Minister's deal.
All right, Marietje, here, the view, it seems like the idea of a no Brexit, and plus the letters that have been sent to, by the MEPs to the British people, the idea of a no Brexit, it seems to be favoured on this side of the channel. But isn't it also the case that indeed whatever the result of the referendum has to be respected?
Sure, but that's been the work that has been carried out over the past 2 years. It is a negotiation between 28 governments, where the 27 that intend to remain in the European Union agree.
But there's still hope that they will stay.
Maybe some people. I think a lot of people on this side would have preferred the UK to stay in the European Union. I mean, that's no secret, but we were not asked. It was the British people, and indeed justice has to be done to that vote. It was a simple vote on a very complex issue, and I think the internal debate on what it actually means, reflected in what parliamentarians don't want, shows how little thinking there has been about what should happen in the future. And I think it's actually quite shocking that you say, and I'm happy that you know your colleagues, but that you say a lot of them will decide at the last minute. I mean, that's interesting because this deal has been on the table for a long time. The EU 27 have been consistent in where they stand. So I would hope that people have given significant thought to this significant vote and that it will not be a last minute kind of tossing a coin sort of decision, because the consequences of rejecting this deal or accepting this deal are both very fundamental for the British people first and foremost, because it has been their vote in the referendum that is now being carried out. But I think a lot of new facts have come to the table since that referendum vote.
Yeah.
And although a lot of people don't like the deal that Theresa May has put on the table, it's not very clear that they disagree for the same reason.
And also, indeed, we have been hearing a lot of different opinions, rallying cries, I would call them, in fact. And today, not one, but in fact 2 of Theresa May's former Brexit secretaries came out today, urging their colleagues to vote against her deal. And this is what they had to say earlier.
The Prime Minister and other government ministers spent their time defending this proposed deal, not on the grounds of its merits, but on the grounds that if you don't have that deal, you have either no deal or no Brexit. And this is simply untrue. Indeed, it's facile.
If you look at the exchange of letters, there were some wrong words, but actually they were unequivocal. They were explicit that nothing in those exchange of letters altered in any way the legal consequence of what is in the withdrawal agreement and therefore the Northern Ireland Protocol.
Well, it doesn't seem like they fall into the category of supporters of Mrs. May. So what do you make of what they're saying last minute now?
Well, indeed, they're not supporters of the Prime Minister. They resigned from their cabinet, clearly. So I would expect those 2 members of Parliament, very senior members, One of whom who represents a constituency.
Are their moves influential? Are their opinions influential?
In my region, I'd expect them to say exactly what they have said. And clearly, yes, that there is a body of opinion within Westminster who those two members of Parliament represent. I wasn't suggesting a moment ago for a second that this is a flippant judgment that members of Parliament will arrive at. Far from it. However, for those who have got concerns with this particular agreement, tonight's the night. Tonight's the night where they can make a choice and vote quickly and speedily for a plan to leave the European Union or vote for uncertainty. And that's why I am so sure that quite a number more than we're thinking at the moment will vote for certainty and surety and the Prime Minister's plan, despite the fact that there's a whole range of issues in it which I may not agree with. The Prime Minister doesn't particularly like some of those elements as well, but nevertheless, this is what the compromise has brought to the fore.
I mean, this is such a big night, a big vote. We heard that there's some people gathering in pubs actually watching, who want to watch the vote. What is the general feeling, do you think, Marietje, from this side as we watch that vote?
I think there's sadness. There has been for a while. I mean, remember all those promises that the Brexiteers made, you know, that it was going to be glorious, that it was going to be simple. What I don't hear, neither from these two former secretaries, is what they anticipate will happen by a rejection of the deal that the Prime Minister has negotiated on behalf of the United Kingdom with the 27 other member states. I think that there's no acknowledgement in none of the comments that we heard of what kind of chaos can happen in, you know, the stock markets, on the roads, you know, uncertainty about what people's rights and obligations are, how trade is going to look.
And maybe a perceived freedom in having trade deals, either make it easier to make trade deals. I don't know, is that a fallacy?
Well, it's not only about trade deals, but also about trade-offs. So how is a future trade relation with the EU going to relate what you can negotiate with others? And it's all presented, Brexit as well as future trade deals, as well as the benefits, as simple, easy and glorious. And I think that that is unfair for the people who have been led to believe that this was all going to be, you know, a good news show. It is not. And when I listen to these two former Brexit secretaries, I really think about a Dutch saying that says the best captains are always the ones that are standing ashore. You know, it is so easy to comment from the sidelines. And that is what we've heard in the UK over and over again. And I feel sad for the British people that have believed these empty promises and that are not being prepared for the potential chaos that can come.
I think there's been a lot of, as you were saying, a lot of opinion out there, and it can get quite confusing for people to understand exactly what's going on or what the repercussions are. And indeed, there is a battle for votes, for the influence over the minds of the British voters, and it's also playing out on the pages of social media, on Facebook in particular. And both sides have been spending money to get an edge on today's vote. Alex Morgan and our team in The Cube have more on this part of the story. Alex.
Well, Tessa, the direct battle for votes might be going on in the corridors of power in Westminster, but this is the digital front, the social front. Here we are talking about organisations on both sides spending big to try and win the argument on social media. Now, how do we know this? Well, we're talking specifically about Facebook. And ever since October, as part of their new aim to be transparent, Facebook have published this. It's their ad library report. It allows you to delve in and have a look at who is paying for what when it comes to adverts related to politics and what they call issues of national importance. And you can see, since October, the running total, over £1 million has been spent on the platform. That's cumulatively, that's everybody together, on just over 13,405 adverts at this stage. So who are the big spenders? Well, let's look at the top list, if you like. And Facebook have put this together, this going back to October. Number one, the People's Vote UK. That is, of course, a campaign arguing for a second referendum. They have spent, well, let's have a scroll along. They've spent £222,639 on ads. That's bringing you to just under 2,000 adverts. So what do these look like and how can you spot them? How do you spot a political ad on Facebook? Well, let's just show you. This is an example. This on the Facebook ad database. You can search this yourself too. It is fully open to the public. These are some of the active ads from the People's Vote, for example. You'll see sponsored. These posts will be listed as sponsored and then paid for by. This will allow you to click through and have a look. A lot of these posts here urging people to obviously get on and contact their MPs. But also, let's just go back to those the top spenders, if you like. Also in there, worthy of note, number 3 is the UK government spending over £100,000 of taxpayers' money trying to convince people to get behind the deal. But in the last week specifically, the number 1 spender is a lesser-known organisation called Britain's Future. Now, who are they? Well, they are campaigning against the Brexit deal in favour of what they call a clean Brexit, but other people might call a hard Brexit. In other words, leaving the EU on rather more dramatic terms. They think Theresa May's deal is a bit of a sellout, if you like. Let's just show you who they are. We don't know exactly who is behind it. We know they've spent the most in the week before, last week, leading up to this vote. These kind of posts urging people to contact their MPs to reject this deal. We're seeing a lot of this, trying to influence the vote by getting people to write to their MPs to reject the vote. We do know there's one public figure, I'll just finish on this, one public figure linked to this campaign, Tim Dawson, that's his name. He's a screenwriter, but other than that, and after several attempts to contact them, we don't really know who else could be behind this group, who've been the biggest spenders last week. But you can see here, the digital front, things are full on. So while in the corridors of power, people might be trying to win over votes, on Facebook, the argument is non-stop.
Thank you for that to Alex and her team in the Cube. Maricha, I'll go to you. Has it come to this? Who speaks the loudest on social media? Who spends the most?
Well, did Facebook sponsor this item?
Ah, well.
It could well be. It could well be, because you know, what I think is good is that we talk about who pays for messages. In the Brexit campaign leading up to the referendum, of course, this was completely intransparent. And now we only know what has been put in this database on Facebook. So I think the stakes of what is being communicated on social media and whether it's transparent are very, very high. And we need to know who's paying for messages, but we need to know much more about the algorithms behind the business models of advertising platforms, which is really what Facebook is, and how they're influencing our democracy. And I think no matter on what side you stand on Brexit, you know, this is what you should really want, that people cannot be tricked or lied to about something so important as their fundamental right to vote.
All right, on that note, we have a lot more coming up on Raw Politics. So we will ask MEPs here in Strasbourg if there are any lessons to be learned from Brexit. Plus, saving Europe one hoodie at a time. As British MPs vote on leaving Europe, we talk to a Belgian clothing designer dedicated to keeping the EU together. That's coming up. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, as tonight's vote draws closer, the EU is bracing itself for what lies ahead. It says it is prepared for a no-deal scenario should Theresa May lose, but it insists also that it has been clear throughout. Now, to get more from this side, let's cross over to our correspondent, Maeve McMahon. Maeve, okay, so you've been talking to a lot of the MEPs here in Strasbourg, everyone agreeing, okay, it's not a good day for the UK, but they will be watching tonight's vote, I suspect, with a heavy heart.
A very heavy heart. Brexit is a massive loss for the European Union and the European institutions. Brexit will make them poorer and smaller, and that's why we saw yesterday MEPs, over 100 of them, send a love letter to the UK begging them to stay. But today, when I spoke to MEPs, the mood was more anxious, more worried, more concerned. Just before we went on air, I spoke to Elmar Brok. He's one of the German MEPs who's part of the Brexit Steering Committee. That means that late tonight at about 10 o'clock, he'll be meeting with Michel Barnier to discuss the next steps, of course, after the outcome of that vote. He also sounded a little bit frustrated that Theresa May did trigger Article 50 so soon without a plan. But while all eyes will be on that vote here in Strasbourg, over in the UK, all eyes from Strasbourg will be on that vote. We've been asking MEPs here whether they believe Europe has a role to play in Brexit and what lessons the European Union institutions may have learned.
We all have learned lessons from Brexit. The most important lesson is the unity of the European Union. That if you are leaving the European Union, you cannot have the same benefits of those countries who remain. To band together, to work at the problems we face globally and within our regions in a coordinated way, rather than to allow petty nationalism to once again provoke what is a really unfortunate reaction right the way across Europe.
How could this bunch of lies impact on a democracy that has so much experience, where people are so much aware of what's going on in the world, and in Europe as well, of course. And I think that many different kinds of fears which grew amongst our populations play a decisive role.
If you want to make the case for Europe, you make a positive case. Scaremongering doesn't work. You have to state the facts and remind people of the obvious. We Europeans are 7% of the global population together. If we want to carry any weight, it's together.
What we can learn from this is that we have to really take care how the national governments actually present the European Union, because the results are clear. If you basically ride this wave and be in opposition of the European Union as such, people get confused, and this is the result of it.
If Theresa May asks for an extension, where would you be on that? Would you allow for that extension? And if so, until when? Because we've got elections coming up in May.
Well, you know, if there is any chance that the UK would stay on, I would go for any option.
In one word, if you were Theresa May, how would you be feeling today?
Well, I shouldn't, but I wish her good luck.
I don't envy her, but I admire her nerve.
I would be embarrassed.
Expectant. All right.
Thank you so much. And don't forget, Tessa, MEPs here in the Parliament in Strasbourg will have to vote on that withdrawal agreement.
All right, thank you for that, our correspondent Mae McMahon. And to talk more about the mood here in Strasbourg, I am joined by Anna Maria Corazza Bildt, Swedish MEP with the European People's Party, and Ignacio Corrao, an Italian MEP with the Five Star Movement, and he's with the EFDD. Now, Anna Maria, I'll start with you. You said mood, heavy heart, but there's been also a lot of self-reflection. I'll ask you the same question. What lessons, if any, should the EU learn from Brexit, and what responsibility did it have?
Well, I hope it's going to be more a vaccine than a contagious, that we learn that even a democracy like Great Britain can be paralyzed for 2 years, and a country polarized like it has been, unfortunately, because of Brexit. The best agreement with the European Union is to be a member of the European Union. But I would like to say that I feel with heavy heart tonight that maybe for the first time in the history of the European Union, a vote in a national parliament will affect the future of your children and my children more than any time before. So I hope that responsibility will prevail. And that's also the other lessons learned. I mean, we need responsible political debates.
Ignacio, do you have a heavy heart?
Well, not really.
Considering, yes, expectedly,
really.
Okay.
What I think it's about the lesson that the European Union hasn't learned any lesson, because we didn't really have questioned ourselves about the reasons that brought the British people to leave the European Union, and still the European Union is making the same errors. So I don't think the lesson has been learned. Like policies of austerity, being very far away from normal citizen needs, still the same errors are made by the European Union, and we hope things can change with the next election. And from the British side, of course, there is the big lessons to be learned. You cannot make a referendum and you cannot organize a Brexit without thinking about the consequences, because this is a very big paradox. There is a vote on a paradox today after 2 years of mess. So this is something really chaotic that we've been observing.
Well, that's an example of the kind of debate we don't need to have, where we show the populists that continue just to criticize and criticize and criticize without proposing any better alternative,
we analyze facts.
Without learning lessons, and exactly without analyzing facts, which is the problem that we had in the campaign for Brexit. Unfortunately, we still have in the debate in Brexit. That's what leads to a situation that 1 hour from the vote, we still don't know if there is a better alternative, that those that would irresponsibly vote against it is our problem, because it will affect your children and my children. I hope that it will be a responsible vote.
It was not our mistake.
The agreement will move forward. But continue to just criticize and protest has not led anywhere. Politicians like Boris Johnson and you, they are not the ones who build a better Europe.
It was a big mistake.
Are you part of the problem? Are populists part of the problem?
Of course. Absolutely. The problem there is in UK today, absolutely no. We can be part of the solution if we have the chance to show that we governing have the solution. We are doing so in Italy, thinking about people who have been forgotten about the governments during the last years. We are doing so in Italy. And about the British case, of course, it's a problem that today is in UK because the government of the United Kingdom did a referendum without thinking of the consequences. This is not a European problem. This was a big mistake made by the government of UK.
And what Anna Maria is bringing up, though, is the rhetoric, right? The rhetoric.
Yes, the rhetoric, the tones. I mean, we have to be cool, calm, collected, responsible leaders and think about the future of our children. And you don't achieve that by just criticizing everyone and never giving alternatives that are better, because that's alternatives. That's
Anna Maria, when I look at the deal, I would like to ask you this. How should Europe react then? Wouldn't it be in the interest of the European Union to be a bit more flexible in renegotiating? Sure, it's going to be difficult to get 27 countries to agree again, but if there's a will, there's a way. Isn't it to the benefit of the EU to possibly renegotiate this deal with Theresa May and get it through?
Well, we didn't put the red lines. The UK put the red lines by saying no internal market, no custom union. So how do we deal with the issue of the border with Ireland? We would like to find a way to have a seamless border and, of course, frictionless trade. With the best we could come with, I think Michel Barnier has been, with a united European Union behind him, negotiating in good faith, in a cool, calm and collected. The backstop is an insurance. Right. It's not a permanent issue. It's the best we could offer. I think we should be open to prolong if there is really a plan.
We don't have we don't have much time, but I'll just give you time to react because you were smiling as Anna Maria was speaking.
Well, in my opinion, the end of the paradox is that will be no Brexit and that we will have a British delegation again in the next term, in the next legislature.
I hope there will be no Brexit.
See, that's where you agree.
That could be a good chance to work together with British for a different future of Europe. I mean, I won't be sad about that.
Interestingly, that's where you do agree. All right, as British MPs vote on the UK leaving the EU, some Belgian designers are actually encouraging people to choose to be European. European by choice, it's a relatively new brand offering a range of clothing from t-shirts to hoodies and caps, all emblazoned with the post-World War II flag of Europe. Now, the company isn't affiliated with the EU, but it does aim to promote continental European identity, and it embraces countries which are not members of the bloc, including soon-to-be Brexit Britain. All right, Sene Dehan Scooter is the founder of European by Choice, and he is joining me now live from Antwerp. Sene, very good to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. Okay, tell me first, what made you want to pursue this, to create this brand that promotes a European identity? Is this Brexit inspired?
No, totally not. For me, I have always felt European. But I felt the European identity was not presented in culture. Europe is always linked to politics, and politics can be the second thing, but the first thing should always be culture. So if Europe, the EU, or just Europe as a continent has a chance of succeeding in being prosperous and being connected and facing the future together, then culture should be first. So that's why we started a fashion brand, which is culture, of course.
Yeah, is this how you make Europe cool? And has Brexit maybe made Europe cool?
Oh, I don't know. That's a really political question. And I'm a film director myself. I'm not in politics at all. So for me, it's all about culture. And if the Brits or the people of the UK decide to leave the EU, then that's fine for me. I would love to have them within the EU. But again, the fashion brand is because a few people know, but this flag is really the continental flag of Europe. It's the flag is much older than the EU. So for us, it's about a continental identity, cultural.
All right, and just very quickly, who are the people who wear your clothes, and what do they say about this?
Well, the thing is, we started with a crowdfunding a few months ago, and it went viral. We did not expect this. We thought we would do a small web shop, and if I can wear something myself, then I'm happy already. But it really went viral. Thousands of people from all over the EU and Europe and even the world joined us. And I think it's really moderate people. I think the extremes are very loud and in the media. And the like the populists and Of course, I'm not politically expired, so if they have an idea of something, then there's no problem. But I think it's the people who buy our stuff are really the moderate people, and it's the biggest group actually. But they don't make any noise.
Interesting thing to say, moderate and extremists. All right, thank you very much for your time, Sena Dehan Scooter, founder of European by Choice. Actually, I'll give you a chance to reply to that because he was saying moderate people wear their clothes, and I mean,
I don't think we have to be fanatics about flags, but we have to be strongly focused on people's needs. I mean, this big feeling of being European will be achieved if European people will be represented.
As a Eurosceptic, do you feel European? Or if you feel Italian?
I was born European and I feel European. I was part of all European projects and I'm happy to be European.
And a quick reaction, Anna Maria, we have culture, politics coming together here.
We're united in diversity. I mean, I feel I am strongly Swede, strongly Italian, strongly from the northern part of Italy, Tabiano Castello, a small place with my Parmesan cheese. That's my identity. There's no border, or definitely no belonging to the European Union that takes anything away from my identity. And we have to de-dramatize this European flag. And in all the British debate, it's been presented unfactually, like bureaucrats. We are elected by the people, so we definitely need to reach forward out to the people and explain Europe, de-dramatize Europe, and that's a great initiative. And congratulations, Anna.
And I think it's really interesting at a time when there's a lot of identity politics in the European Union. All right, a lot more to talk about after the break on Raw Politics. Well, Theresa May warned about it. Could a no-deal Brexit lead to a united Ireland? That is still to come. Don't go away. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, the DUP leader, Arlene Foster, said her party will oppose the toxic backstop, as she says, and vote against the withdrawal agreement tonight. Yesterday, Theresa May warned that voting against her deal could lead to the breakup of the United Kingdom. And now for more analysis on the DUP's strategy, let us cross over to Tony Connolly, who is Waiting Europe editor for RTE and author of Brexit and Ireland. Thank you very much for joining us, Tony. All right, we're getting a lot of mixed messages tonight. This is about the border from Theresa May, and now we have Arlene Foster joining in. Can you decode this for us, please?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the DUP, the Brexit issue and the backstop has become really an identity issue. It speaks very clearly to their sense of what this whole issue is about and to their sense of what their base sees as the Brexit dilemma. And of course, they see everything through the lens of the backstop and what they would see as the impact of that backstop, namely leaving Ireland, Northern Ireland on a different footing to the rest of the UK. So while significant swathes of the Conservative Party have wanted modifications to the backstop, they've looked for a time date, some kind of expiry date on the backstop so that it would not be some kind of indefinite entity that Britain would be attached to. The DUP line has been fairly straightforward. They want it gone completely, and they expected Theresa May to go to Brussels to get rid of the backstop. And clearly she hasn't done that. And the tone from Arlene Foster today was rather impatient, saying she didn't even try to get rid of the backstop. Now, it's obviously clear to anyone who's observed the negotiations process that the EU were never going to get rid of the backstop just like that, just to appease the DUP, and nor were they willing either in the past few weeks when Theresa May was looking for this reassurance or these commitments or clarifications, nor were they going to get any expiry date on the backstop. So this has left the DUP with very little room for manoeuvre. So they've really stuck to their line on this.
And just very quickly, the question of a united Ireland, just a very quick thought on that.
Well, of course, a united Ireland would require the consent of people in Northern Ireland, according to the constitutional settlement that is the Good Friday Agreement. But obviously, Brexit has changed the debate. And if, as a result of a hard border or a hard Brexit, people in Northern Ireland felt that they would want to get back into the EU, that option is open to them through a referendum or a border poll. But that is something that the Irish government is not really comfortable about talking about right this minute, given the toxic nature of the debate in Northern Ireland. but technically speaking, a united Ireland could be something that is perhaps less of a taboo than it was before the Brexit story unfolded.
Idea that has been floated around recently. All right, thank you for that, Tony Connolly, Europe editor there from RTE. All right, joining me to discuss this, we have David McAllister, German MEP with the European People's Party and chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee. And also with me is Jim Nicholson, Northern Irish MEP from the Ulster Unionist Party, sitting in the ECR group. Now, I'll put the question to you. What Theresa May is saying, that with what is happening, if there is a no-deal Brexit, the prospect of a united Ireland is even more real. Is that what is your position on that?
I think I'm going to be very generous to the Prime Minister and say that over the last few days, her and her cabinet ministers have been running around clutching at straws, making all sorts of wild statements. And the sooner, quite frankly, later on tonight, we will have the reality. Many of us were able to see lots of things happen and to crystal ball gaze where we would be. But until we get this vote out of the way and until we see what happens over the next day or two, I don't think anybody knows where we're going. And certainly I can tell you very straightforwardly, and I think Tony Connolly got it pretty close to right, there is going to be no united Ireland. Don't hold out a hope for that, because people like me who are not in favour of leaving the European Union are not in favour of United Ireland. So there's a lot of people in Northern Ireland the same as me.
And we look at the DUP strategy, they seem to be of the opinion that they could vote against the Theresa May's deal and force the EU to go back to the negotiating table. Why do you think they think that this is even a possibility when the EU has been clear there's no more negotiating?
I can't tell you why the DUP and other members of the House of Commons believe this might happen. 17 months, the EU and the United Kingdom negotiated this withdrawal agreement. I think in the end, it's a fair and balanced compromise for both sides, and this is the way forward to get an orderly Brexit done. By the way, a Brexit we in the European Union didn't ask for. But if the House of Commons says no, and I agree with Jim that there won't be a majority for this, then it's up to the UK and especially the House of Commons to present a way forward.
And, you know, the backstop is really the biggest sticking point here. It is a backstop. Can the Irish do something to move the situation? Or can the EU put, I don't know, pressure on the Irish for something? Is there a room to maneuver there?
Let me say this. When we get the result, whatever it is tonight, it's going to be extremely important how Brussels reacts. Very important. And then I think we need a little time for everybody to calm down and deal with reality. The one thing I have learned, the June of this year, I'll have been in this house for 30 years. And the one thing I have learned in this house is you have always got to find, and there always is the possibility if you work hard enough to find the compromise. The backstop is the problem. The backstop is there. Let's deal with that problem and let's not go for a hard Brexit. My party is totally opposed to any dealings or any suggestion that there would be a hard Brexit. Nobody wants that, and certainly nobody in Northern Ireland wants it. And I can say this very clearly on behalf of all the people. We want to go forward working together and building where we have come from in the past. And my party did that by bringing about the peace.
We don't have much time, but Dave, I'll give you time in 10 seconds. How should the EU react after the vote tonight?
Well, first we have to wait what exactly will happen in the House of Commons, and then it will be up to the British to present a way forward. Once again, we in the European Union are interested in getting this Brexit done in an orderly manner, and we have to really try hard to avoid any kind of no-deal scenario.
All right, we have a lot more coming up on Raw Politics. How to watch Brexit like a pro. We will break down tonight's vote and head live to London for the latest. Don't go away. Welcome back to Raw Politics. Now, make no mistake, tonight's vote on Theresa May's Brexit deal will be a truly historic moment for both Britain and the EU. So for the benefit of any British MPs watching, and of course you at home, let us take a closer look at the deal, which is before the House of Commons.
Step into 10 Downing Street. Take a look inside Theresa May's prime ministerial box, and you'll find her Brexit deal. It's in two parts. The withdrawal agreement outlines the way by which the UK will leave the EU, and the political declaration that discusses Britain's future relationship with the bloc. Let's start with what you need to know about the withdrawal agreement. First of all, it's a whopping 585 pages long. It sets out what's called the transition period. This means that the EU will treat the UK as if it were a member until the 31st of December 2020. But Britain won't have a seat at any of the EU institutions. The deal protects the rights of over 3 million EU citizens in the UK and over 1 million UK nationals in EU countries, but only until the end of the transition period in 2020. On the touchy issue of the so-called divorce bill, the agreement ensures that the UK will honour financial commitments which were undertaken while a member state. It's thought that this will see the UK stump up 43 billion euros. And the notorious backstop, the agreement which prevents a hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland. This is done by creating a single customs territory between the EU and the UK. And here's the controversial part. The backstop can only be removed with the agreement of both parties. Flick through the political declaration and you'll notice it's much shorter at just 26 pages. It sets out the goal of establishing an ambitious, broad, deep and flexible partnership between the UK and the EU after the end of the transition. Although the text admits that the new relationship cannot amount to the rights or obligations of membership, it offers warm words for the UK, suggesting that both sides should approach the next stage of their ties with high ambition. But will this all have been a waste of time? MEPs decide tonight.
All right, and joining me in the studio is Slovenian MEP and Vice Chair of the Socialists and Democrats group, Tanja Fajon. And still with me is German CDU MEP and Chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee, David McAllister. All right, Tanja, I'll ask you what we were talking about before the break, is that how should the EU react after tonight's vote?
First of all, I would like to say that no one wins with Brexit, and I'm sad, or we are sad, to see UK to leave. So what will happen after today's vote? First of all, it's a decision of British citizens, so we will expect or wait what Theresa May will have to say, and then we will react. Now, the decision is in her hands, and I do expect that till Monday maybe we will be more certain what to do. Certainly no deal is the worst scenario what can happen. I imagine there will be a request for a postponement, and if that happens, I would always advise the EU governments to listen, of course under the condition that the UK clearly say what do they want. It's a lot of uncertainty, and the situation is very chaotic on the side of the British negotiators.
Yeah, it's a worst case scenario for obviously the European Union, but some would disagree on the other side of the channel. David, I'll ask you, what are the three things you're watching out for in tonight's vote?
Well, I think we all expect that the Prime Minister will lose the vote, so this withdrawal agreement won't get support now. The numbers will be decisive. How far will the government be away from a majority? And then decisive will be what happens the next days. I mean, the House of Commons have decided that the Prime Minister only has 3 days. So on Monday she will have to already present her Plan B. And we will have to wait and see if there will be a no confidence motion triggered by the Labour Party. And I would agree with Tanja Fajon that we should really wait after the vote what the British interpretation is. Because once again, the ball is definitely in the British court. And if they say no to what we have agreed upon, then it's up to the British to say what the alternative might be. And we can postpone the 29th of March. We can prolong this phase, but it has to be a substantial reason, and it just can't be about kicking the can along the road for another few weeks.
I mean, and especially since this is a European election, it's coming up, and if you imagine the combination of having to prolong this Brexit negotiation and in the middle of the European elections. I mean, is this a scenario that has crossed the minds of MEPs?
You're aware we sent a letter signed by more than 100 members of the European Parliament with a call to British citizens to rethink the decision. It's not too late. We have also the court ruling saying the same. So in case there is a postponement under some clear conditions, as the UK will ask or not ask, it is in the interest, I would say, of socialists and democrats. We have a big Labour group also in our group, that we could hold once again the European elections also in the UK. That could be in our interest, of course, but again, it is a decision that is on the side of British citizens and also of Theresa May.
Yeah, is there, if there will be another chance for the British citizens to vote, I mean, is there anything the EU is going to do differently this time? I think it's a question we've asked before, but it's important to know.
Well, the situation is now that the UK will leave on the 29th of March. And if we're going to extend the Article 50 procedure, first of all, we need the UK government to ask for this.
Sure.
Then the EU 27 have to agree. But there are 2 points which we really have to consider. We really need something substantially different.
Sure.
And it's not just about gaining time. And the other point is, of course, we certainly need clarity before the European elections on the 26th of May.
I mean, I think that is something that has been lacking in a lot of this. It's clarity and certainty. All right, first of all, let's cross to our correspondent, Vincent McAviney in London. I think we have him now. Vincent, so what are you watching out for tonight?
Good evening, Tessa. Well, when this vote process begins, probably around 7 local time, there are 4 amendments that they need to work through. Those are likely to all be defeated, and then we will get to the main vote. Now, if you imagine the House of Commons like a donut, the centre is the chamber, and then the MPs have to go around the sides through corridors to vote ayes to the left, noes to the right. Now, we're expecting the Prime Minister to be defeated, so more MPs will go through the corridor on the right, which means that when they come back in, the first indication you will get is that the tellers will be on that side of the chamber to give the figures to the clerks in the House. So we should be able to detect quite quickly who has won and who hasn't. We think the Prime Minister will lose. Then the next thing to watch out for the Prime Minister. She is likely to stand up very quickly and we think set out her plan B, what she will do now. And all the indications we have are that plan B is in fact plan A, that she is simply going to go back to Brussels, try to get more from them. They will ask what do MPs actually want. She is probably unable to tell them because of such a conflicting picture here in the UK. She will then at some point bring back her withdrawal agreement for another vote. She'll be hoping that the pressure externally being put on by members of the public who want Brexit, by business, by the pound possibly sliding, that might convince her MPs. And then watch out for Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader. He is likely to stand up then after the Prime Minister and try to bring a motion of no confidence in the government. Now, he does not alone have the votes to carry that with the Labour Party. The SNP, they will likely back it. The DUP, who did a deal with Theresa May, question mark, don't think they will back it. Some Tory MPs, could they back it? We will see, because that vote will then take place tomorrow afternoon after the weekly PMQ. So a lot to watch out for tonight. Watch the backbenches in those scenes in the House of Commons. See how vocal, how enraged MPs are.
Yeah, thank you very much for that, Vincent McAviney. I mean, so a lot to watch out for indeed tonight, and it's really quite exciting to you know, as Vincent was explaining. So what are you watching out for? I'll ask you the same question.
I mean, it clearly confirms that the British negotiators didn't know or don't know what exactly do they want, and that was shown throughout the process. I don't expect really some now radical change, but it also reflects the whole situation in the UK, what dangerous populism can do, because a lot of British citizens today might vote different. So I would again say it's not too late to rethink the decision, but with whatever Theresa May will come, I mean, let's see, we'll have to wait till Monday and respect the decision of British citizens.
That's,
I mean, maybe like an Alice in Wonderland.
All right. A lot more Brexit coverage, obviously, tonight. But before we go, it's time for tonight's Raw Moment, which comes from Westminster, of course, where campaigners for a second referendum have erected a mock-up of the Titanic dubbed HMS Brexit, complete with a fake iceberg. Let's take a look. All right, that's one metaphor. Do any of you have another one for Brexit? Okay, Tanya.
Yeah, I already started. Alice in the Wonderland. I got this idea, you know, Theresa May like Alice in Wonderland. It's kind of magic or fantastic world, but at some point she has to go back to the reality.
And David, do you have a metaphor?
Brexit is like moving into a new house, but you don't know what the new house will look like. You don't know what it will cost. You don't know if the new house will need a renovation. But actually, for me personally, being half British by birth, Brexit is such a sad thing, and it's really a historic mistake. And I can only agree with Tanya Fayon. The door to the EU remains open for the British people.
I think that is a general mood here. A lot of sadness indeed here as we watch for that vote. All right, thank you for watching us tonight on Raw Politics. We love to hear your thoughts and a lot more Brexit coverage. Let's go now to Lyon. Euronews tonight with Jeanette Jalil.